Creamer Media's Mining Weekly is talking to Dan Allen, the Senior Vice President of tyres Mining Tire Group. Dan Allen oversees the international operations of tyres Mining Tire Group. Dan, just to kick off, what is the scope of business for tyres Mining Tire Group?
Well, thanks for the question, Martin. Look, we are operating on 5 continents these days. We're in about 22 countries. So we serve surface mining customers, underground mining customers, and customers associated with the mining industry across almost 22 countries around the world. We're a small privately owned company based out of Vernon, British Columbia, Canada, but we've managed to find ourselves in many foreign lands.
And when it comes to end-of-life mining tires, they've done their bit. How are these tires being dealt with these days?
That's a great question. I think more and more this is on the minds of a lot of international mining companies. They know that the traditional way, so I'm going back 20 years maybe, but traditionally mining companies would take end-of-life tires and probably use them as backfill in some of their operations as they finish a zone or as they reclaim some of the land in their mines. These days, with our environmental stewardship focus, I think many mining companies wanting to do more and more the right thing when it comes to environmental regulations, they need to figure out a different way to do this. So we've seen the advent of things like shredding. What shredding does is take a whole end-of-life tires and crumb it to little pieces. Those pieces can be used as tire-derived fuel in some cases, so burned for energy. In some cases, they could be pressed into newer products or substitutable products, things like mats or flip-flop sandals or these sorts of things. But these days, we're looking for that higher and best use of the product. So that the challenge is really, how do we take sometimes a tire that's 4.5 tons in weight and break that down into very usable components? And how do we make sure that that fits well into our environmental stewardship policies and responsibilities? And how do we make sure that that, at the end of the day, is commercially viable?
When and why did you begin thinking about designing a solution for recycling mining tires?
Well, this has been an issue for mining companies, and they've been aware of the problem for many, many years. If you use something like Google Earth and look at Chile, for example, many of these mining companies have not been allowed to bury tires for many years. So they have yards full of these end-of-life tires. So it's always been an issue for mining companies. What sort of piqued our interest the most was that the Chilean government was introducing legislation that would require mining companies to ensure that they had a duty of care or environmental stewardship on the disposal of those tires. And at the time that was put in place, there was no real solution in place to help the miners deal with the problem. So we sort of took it upon ourselves to figure out, okay, well, how can we help these customers with this problem? And that's how we ended up into the business of tire recycling.
Just give me, again, more insight into the solution you've now built. And how does this fit into these words we're hearing constantly these days? The circular economy.
Yeah, these are the magic words, right? And look, I think that in any evolution, especially in the recycling journey of any product, I think there's a lot of learning that goes on, and you try and work with what you've got, and then you take the next leap. From a tire perspective, we use the theme of the highest and best use of the product. So we started looking for a solution. We wanted to have something that would be able to really be used again in another new product in a similar sort of case. So what we use is a process called thermal conversion. Many might know this as pyrolysis, and I think that pyrolysis has been around for a long time, so that's nothing new. But the fact that we are trying to do this on a very large commercial scale with ultra large mining tires is quite unique. So this process involves, we take that 4.5 ton tire, we have to clean it, we break it down into pieces. We insert it in a huge kiln that handles about 20 ton every time we run it. These pieces are stacked as close as we can get them together. Heat is applied to start the process, and then friction and the movement of this kiln generate and start the process of pyrolysis. At the end of this process, you get 3 fundamental things coming out of the tire itself. So you get that high tensile steel that's used in the construct of the tire. You get carbon ash, which as we start to work with it and clean it, it can be used as a replacement for carbon black, which I'll talk about in 2 seconds. And then, of course, you've got the oil. And there's a lot of oil that is actually in a tire. And I don't know how many people know that, but a single large tire contains almost 2,000 liters of oil. And that oil needs to be processed and refined. So at the end of it, you've got 3 fundamental things. The steel can be reused in foundries. The oil can be redeployed into other oil applications. And then the carbon ash, when it's cleaned, we can actually put it back into the manufacturing of rubber or in the manufacturing of other goods. And that creates that sort of circular economy.
Well, you're doing a good job for Mother Earth there. But what do you see as the main challenges, or should I say, the necessary considerations for developing mining tire recycling solutions?
Well, look, I think that there's a few of them. The one is, we're a tire service company at our heart and our core. We've been forced to learn a lot about new markets and downstream markets and carbon black. And it's been a bit of a challenge for us as we've learned this, some painful lessons, and I think maybe some expensive lessons along the way. I think as well, making sure that you're good environmental stewards. There's a lot of shortcuts that can be taken in this process. And we've tried to make sure on every step of the way that whether it's safety for the team members at the plant, whether it's being responsible for the outgoing product from the end of the kiln, and developing those downstream markets is all done in a responsible way.
And what should mining companies be considering when it comes to disposing of their tires? What should be top of mind?
Look, I think top of mind I would like to think that mining companies are thinking similarly as we are, and that is, recycling is one thing, but I think there are many things that are called recycling, and I think it's important that we all remember we want the highest and best use of that product. So the higher up that recycling hierarchy we get, then the more responsible we're being in the disposal of the products that we're talking about. With mining companies themselves, many discussions that we have, these recycling features, or let's say the end of life tire problem, is left too late in the process. So many mines are calling that sort of part of the reclamation budget or part of the rehabilitation of the land after. The problem is that this is an ongoing issue. And if you don't start early enough, I mean, you've got hundreds of tons of these tires that have to be processed. So we really try and work with the customers to move this to a today problem and not a tomorrow problem.
And do you see this as a viable solution for us, for the mines here in our beloved African continent?
Africa has done a good job of understanding that there needs to be a disposal fee. So I think some of the work from legislation and government has sort of been done. I think there's some refining that has to be done in the legislation, but I certainly think that mining companies that we have spoken with in Africa want to see a viable solution so that they can go down this road and they can start that journey. Traditionally in Africa, most of the solutions for recycling have really just been shredding, and shredding is it's on the hierarchy, but it's not that highest and best use of the product, right? So I think they're looking for an opportunity to see the solution in working condition and commercial scale, so that they can feel comfort to use that in their operations. So yes, I think they're looking forward to it.
And in a nutshell, before I let you go, what, in your view, should be the key takeaway from this interview?
I think the key takeaway is that look, everything is an evolution, right? So the things that we did 20 years ago, we now know maybe we should have done that better. And I think these are the things now that when we look at solutions for some of the environmental stewardship issues that we've got, or creating a circular economy, we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves about the past. And we should look forward with a bit of a higher standard, so that we're not just replicating sort of the problems and the solutions of the past. We're looking for tomorrow's generation or the stewardship rules that we would like to see in place in the next 10 years. So I think if there's an awareness that can be built that, we can look for the highest and best use of some things, and it takes some time, but there's a commitment, I think that's a great message.
That was Creamer Media's Mining Weekly, speaking to Dan Allen, who oversees the international operations of Tyres Mining Tire Group.